What if I told you that everything in your history books about the pyramids is completely wrong? What if these amazing stone giants have been keeping the biggest secret in human history for over 10,000 years? A secret so incredible that it would change how we see our entire past. Picture this. You're standing in front of the Great Pyramid of Giza. The hot Egyptian sun beats down on your face. You look up at these massive stone blocks, each one weighing as much as a school bus. There are over 2 million of them, stacked perfectly on top of each other, reaching toward the sky like a mountain made by human hands. For your whole life, you've been told these pyramids were built by ancient Egyptians about 4,500 years ago. Simple people with simple tools who somehow managed to create the most perfect buildings ever made. But what if that story is missing the most important part? What if these pyramids are actually messages from a lost world, a civilization so advanced that they could do things we can barely do today, even with our modern machines and computers? I want you to imagine something with me. Close your eyes and picture the smartest person you know. Maybe it's your teacher, or your mum or dad, or someone famous you've heard about. Now imagine that person trying to build something as big as a football stadium, using only hammers and ropes. Sounds impossible, right? That's exactly what we've been told the ancient Egyptians did. But here's the thing that will blow your mind. When scientists look closely at these pyramids, they find clues that tell a very different story. Clues carved right into the stone itself. These aren't just any buildings. The Great Pyramid is so perfectly built that if you made it 10 times smaller, it would still be more accurate than anything we build today. The stones fit together so tightly that you can't even slide a piece of paper between them. They knew exactly where north was, better than we do with our GPS systems. But here's where it gets really mysterious. Nobody has ever found a single mummy inside the Great Pyramid. Not one treasure, not even a piece of broken pottery. It's completely empty, like a giant stone box that was never meant to hold anything at all. So if it wasn't a tomb, what was it? And who really built it? The answers to these questions will take us on an incredible journey. We'll discover evidence hidden in remains standing there in the desert like ancient guardians, keeping their secrets safe until the day we would be smart enough to understand them. Are you ready to discover what the pyramids have really been trying to tell us? Are you ready to see human history with completely new eyes? This isn't just another story about old buildings. This is the story of who we really are, where we really came from, and what we're really capable of. It's a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about the past. But it's also a story of hope. Because if our ancestors could build these incredible monuments after surviving a global catastrophe, imagine what we could accomplish if we put our minds to it. The pyramids are calling to us across thousands of years. They're asking us to remember. They're asking us to wake up and see the truth that's been hiding in plain sight. So let's begin this incredible journey together. Let's unlock the greatest mystery on Earth, and let's discover the amazing story that the pyramids have been waiting thousands of years to tell. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because this adventure is just getting started. And trust me, what we're about to discover will change everything you think you know about human history, the story they tell us. Before we can understand the real truth about the pyramids, we need to know the story that everyone learns in school. It's a beautiful story, and it sounds so complete and perfect that most people never question it. Let me paint this picture for you. Imagine ancient Egypt, about 4,500 years ago. The sun rises over the Nile River, just like it does today. But back then, this land was ruled by kings called pharaohs, who weren't just regular people. The Egyptians believed these pharaohs were actually living gods walking on earth. Now, think about what it would be like to be a god king. Your most important job wouldn't be to rule over people or build cities. Your most important job would be to make sure you could live forever after you died. Because if you didn't make it to the afterlife safely, the whole world would fall apart. That's where the pyramids come in. According to the official story, these massive monuments weren't just tombs. They were like giant magical machines designed to help the pharaoh's spirit travel to the stars. Every stone, every passage, every room, and even hospitals. Archaeological teams have found this village, and it shows us that the workers were well fed and well cared for. These ancient builders were incredibly smart. Before Khufu's pyramid, other pharaohs had tried to build similar monuments. They learned from their mistakes. One pyramid, called the Bent Pyramid, actually changes angles halfway up because the builders realized it was going to collapse if they kept going straight up. But by the time they built Khufu's pyramid, they had figured out all the problems. They knew exactly how to cut the stones, how to move them, and how to stack them perfectly. The result was the Great Pyramid, which stayed the tallest building in the world for almost 4,000 years. Here's how they supposedly did it. First, workers would go to quarries and cut out massive blocks of limestone using copper tools and stone hammers. Each block weighed about as much as a car. Then they would load these blocks onto wooden sleds and drag them using ropes and lots of people. The biggest challenge was getting the stones to the top of the pyramid as it got taller. The most popular theory is that they built huge ramps, either straight up one side or spiraling around the pyramid like a mountain road. As the pyramid grew, the ramps would get longer and longer, allowing workers to drag stones higher and higher. It sounds reasonable, doesn't it? Thousands of dedicated workers, simple but effective tools, and lots of time and patience. The official story says it took about 20 years to build the Great Pyramid, which means they would have had to place one block every 2 minutes, working day and night. The pharaoh would have his burial chamber deep inside the pyramid, surrounded by passages filled with treasures for the afterlife. Magic spells called hieroglyphs would be carved on the walls to protect him. When he died, his body would be turned into a mummy and placed in a golden coffin inside the pyramid, where it would be safe forever. This story has satisfied historians and archaeologists for over 100 years. It explains everything in a nice, neat package. It doesn't require us to believe anything too crazy or impossible. Ancient people were smart and hard-working, and given enough time, they could accomplish amazing things. The story even explains why the pyramids were built at Giza specifically. The limestone there was perfect before any human pharaoh ever lived. Ancient Egyptian texts call the pyramids the works of the first time. They describe them as monuments from an earlier age, when gods walked the earth and taught humans the secrets of civilization. Even the Great Sphinx, according to these ancient writings, was already ancient when the first pharaohs came to power. Isn't that curious? The people who lived closest to the pyramids in time, who would have known the most about how they were built, insisted they didn't build them at all. They treated the pyramids with the same wonder and mystery that we do today. There's something else that doesn't quite fit. If the pyramids were built as tombs for pharaohs, and if the ancient Egyptians were so proud of these incredible achievements, why didn't they ever build anything like them again? They built smaller pyramids, but nothing that even came close to the size, precision, and perfection of the 3 great pyramids at Giza. It's like the knowledge and skill needed to build these monuments just vanished. Almost as if the people who knew how to do it were different from the people who came after. These little cracks in the perfect story are what first made some researchers start asking different questions. Instead of asking, how did the ancient Egyptians build the pyramids? They started asking, what if the ancient Egyptians didn't build them at all? That simple change in the question opens up a whole new world of possibilities. And as we're about to discover, the pyramids themselves have been patiently waiting to tell us their real story all along. Make sure you're subscribed, because what we're going to explore next will challenge everything you've been taught about human history. The stones themselves are about to speak, and what they have to say is absolutely mind-blowing. When stones speak, have you ever wondered what stories rocks could tell if they could talk? Well, it turns out they can talk, and the story they're telling about the pyramids is completely different from what we've been taught. Let me take you on a journey to understand one of the most incredible discoveries in modern archaeology. It's a discovery that changes everything, and it all starts with looking at stone, the way a detective looks at clues. Standing right next to the Great Pyramid is another ancient story in the history books. Let me help you understand what Dr. Shock saw. Imagine you have two pieces of wood. You take one piece and leave it outside during a windy, sandy storm. The wind and sand will scratch it up with horizontal marks, almost like someone took sandpaper to it. Now take the second piece and put it under a waterfall for a year. The water will carve deep, wavy channels running straight down. These two pieces of wood would look completely different, right? The first would have horizontal scrapes, and the second would have vertical grooves carved by flowing water. This is exactly what Dr. Shock found when he examined the Sphinx. The stone showed clear signs of water erosion, not wind and sand erosion. Deep, vertical channels ran down the walls around the Sphinx, carved by water flowing downward for many, many years. But here's the problem. For the last 4,500 years, Giza has been a desert. There hasn't been enough rain to cause this kind of erosion. So when could this water damage have happened? Dr. Shock looked at climate records and found something amazing. The last time there was enough rain in Egypt to cause this type of erosion was during a period called the African Humid Period. This was a time when the Sahara Desert wasn't a desert at all. Instead, it was green and lush, with rivers, lakes, and plenty of rain. This wet period ended about 5,000 years ago. That means the Sphinx had to be carved before then, when there was still enough rain to create the erosion patterns Dr. Shock observed. Think about what this means. If the Sphinx was built during the rainy period, it could be 7,000, 8,000, maybe even 10,000 years old or more. That's at least twice as old as we've been told, and possibly much older. Let me paint a picture to help you really understand this. Imagine if someone found your great-great-grandmother's diary, but the dates in it showed she wrote it before she was born. You'd know something was wrong with the dating, wouldn't you? That's exactly what's happening with the Sphinx. The diary, written in the stone, tells us about heavy rains that happened thousands of years before the Sphinx was supposed to have been built. Either our dating is wrong, or rocks can lie. And rocks don't lie. This discovery is like finding a dinosaur bone in your backyard. Sphinx was carved as a complete lion during that ancient rainy period, maybe 10,000 years ago or more. For thousands of years, it sat there as the climate changed and the rain stopped. The head, being the most exposed part, would have been worn down by thousands of years of weather. Then, around 4,500 years ago, when Pharaoh Khafra came to power, he might have discovered this ancient, damaged monument. The head was so worn down that it was barely recognizable. So he ordered his workers to recarve what was left of the original lion's head into his own human face. This would explain why the head is too small. It was carved from what remained of a much larger, older lion's head. It would also explain why Khafra is associated with the Sphinx, even though the geological evidence says it's much older than his reign. Khafra didn't build the Sphinx. He found it and gave it a new face. His face. This discovery is so important because it proves that an advanced civilization existed thousands of years before we thought civilization was even possible. Think about what this means. We're told that 10,000 years ago, humans were still living in caves, hunting with basic spears, and hadn't even invented farming yet. But the Sphinx suggests that someone back then knew how to organize thousands of workers, plan massive construction projects, and carve the largest single stone statue in the world. Not only that, but they understood astronomy well enough to position the Sphinx facing directly east toward the sunrise. The Sphinx is like a message in a bottle that washed up on the shores of history. It's telling us that our ancestors were far more advanced than we ever imagined. It's proof that human civilization is much, much older than the history books say. And if the Sphinx is this old, what about the pyramids right next to it? Could they be ancient too? Could they also be messages from this lost civilization? The stones are speaking to us across thousands of years. They're telling us that everything we think we know about our past is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole hidden history waiting to the beginning of time. And when ancient people built monuments aligned with specific stars, they accidentally created timestamps that we can read today. This is the story of how the stars revealed the true age of the pyramids, and it's one of the most beautiful discoveries in all of archaeology. Let me take you back to 1994, when a Belgian engineer named Robert Bauval was studying photographs of the three Great Pyramids at Giza. He noticed something that had been staring everyone in the face for thousands of years, but nobody had ever really paid attention to. The three pyramids weren't built in a straight line. There was a slight offset, a little bend in their arrangement. Most people assumed this was just a minor construction error, or perhaps had something to do with the landscape. But Bauval had a different idea. He was looking at the pyramids from above, when he suddenly realized that their arrangement looked familiar. It reminded him of something he'd seen in the night sky. The three stars that make up Orion's belt. Orion is one of the most famous constellations. It looks like a mighty hunter standing in the sky, and his belt is made of three bright stars in a row. But these stars aren't perfectly straight either. Two of them line up nicely, but the third one is slightly offset, exactly like the third pyramid at Giza. When Bauval compared the pyramid layout to Orion's belt, he discovered something incredible. The positions matched almost perfectly. The Great Pyramid corresponded to one star, Khafre's pyramid to the middle star, and the smaller Menkaure pyramid to the third, offset star. It wasn't just close, it was exact. The sizes of the pyramids even matched the brightness of the stars. The two larger pyramids matched the two brighter stars, and the smaller pyramid matched the dimmer star. This couldn't be a coincidence. Someone had deliberately built a map of Orion's belt right here on Earth. But Bauval's discovery got even more amazing when he realized what this meant. You see, because of Earth's wobble, the position of Orion in the sky changes over thousands of years. If you could travel back in time and look at the night sky 5,000 years ago, Orion would be in a slightly different position than it is today. This gave Bauval an incredible tool. At the background of the photo, you can see a specific arrangement of stars. Since you know how the stars move over time, you could calculate exactly when that photo was taken, just by looking at the star positions. That's exactly what Bauval did with the pyramids. The pyramid arrangement was like a photograph of the ancient night sky, preserved in stone for thousands of years. But the Orion correlation goes even deeper. In ancient Egyptian mythology, Orion was associated with Osiris, the god of death and rebirth. The Egyptians believed that when pharaohs died, their souls would travel to Orion and become one with Osiris. What if the pyramid builders weren't just creating tombs? What if they were building a gateway to the stars? A permanent connection between Earth and the heavens that would last forever. The Sphinx fits into this cosmic plan too. Facing due east, the Sphinx watches the sunrise every day, but it's also watching the stars rise before dawn. During the time when Orion's belt perfectly matched the pyramids, around 10,500 BC, the Sphinx would have been watching the constellation of Leo the Lion rise just before the sun. Think about this. The Sphinx has the body of a lion, and it was watching the Lion constellation at the exact time when the pyramids matched Orion's belt. This couldn't possibly be a coincidence. The entire Giza complex was designed as a giant star map, a cosmic calendar that marked a specific moment in time, the end of the last ice age, around 10,500 BC. This discovery changes everything about how we understand the pyramids. They weren't just built for one pharaoh's burial. They were built to commemorate and preserve the memory of a specific time in Earth's history. But what was so special about that time? What happened around 10,500 BC that was important enough to build the world's most incredible monuments to remember it? The answer takes us to one of the most dramatic periods in Earth's history, a time when the climate changed rapidly, civilizations fell, and the world as it existed was completely transformed. Around 12,900 years ago, the Earth suddenly plunged back into an ice age after thousands of years of warming. This period, called the alignments, suggests that someone around 10,500 BC wanted to create a permanent record of that time. They built monuments so precise and so durable that they would last forever, carrying their message across thousands of years to a future civilization. Us. The pyramids aren't just ancient buildings, they're time capsules from a lost world, and the message they're sending us is clear. We were here. We survived, and you should know the truth about what happened. This cosmic calendar reveals that human civilization is far older and far more sophisticated than we ever imagined. It shows us that our ancestors understood astronomy, mathematics, and engineering on a level that we're only beginning to appreciate today. Make sure to share this video with your family and friends, because this isn't just ancient history. It's our history, the story of where we really came from, and what we're truly capable of achieving. But the stars weren't the only impossible thing about these monuments. As we're about to discover, the engineering required to build them was so advanced that even today, with all our modern technology, we still can't fully explain how it was done. Get ready to have your mind completely blown, because what I'm about to show you proves that whoever built the pyramids had technology and knowledge that we can barely match today, even with our most advanced machines. Let me ask you a simple question. If I gave you unlimited money, the best construction crews in the world, and all the modern equipment you could want, do you think you could build an exact copy of the Great Pyramid? The answer might surprise you. Most engineers today say it would be almost impossible, even with our modern technology, and when you see the evidence, you'll understand why. Let's start with something basic, the size. The Great Pyramid contains about 2.3 million stone blocks. Each block weighs between 2 and 15 tons. That's like stacking 2.3 million cars on top of each other, and doing it so perfectly that the whole thing stands stable for thousands of years. If they built this pyramid in 20 years, like the history books say, they would have had to place one block every 2 minutes, working 24 hours a day, 365 days. A football field and got it leveled to within 2.1 centimeters, you'd be considered a master builder. But the Great Pyramid is many times larger than a football field. The corners of the pyramid are aligned to the 4 directions: north, south, east, and west, to within 3/60 of 1 degree. That's more accurate than most buildings constructed today with laser-guided equipment. How did ancient people achieve this level of precision, using ropes and stone tools? Here's something even more incredible. The pyramid faces are built at an angle of exactly 51 degrees, 52 minutes, and 14 seconds. This isn't a random angle. When you do the math, this exact angle creates a pyramid whose height has the same relationship to its base as a circle has to its circumference. In other words, the pyramid is a perfect geometric representation of pi, built in stone. Think about this. Pi wasn't supposed to be discovered by mathematicians until thousands of years after the pyramid was built. But somehow, The pyramid builders knew this incredibly sophisticated mathematical relationship and built it right into their monument. The stones themselves tell an impossible story too. Most of the pyramid is made of limestone blocks that were quarried locally, but the internal chambers are made of granite that came from Aswan, over 500 miles away. Some of these granite blocks weigh 80 tons each. 80 tons. That's like moving 16 elephants, except elephants don't come in convenient rectangular shapes. These granite blocks are perfectly cut and fitted so precisely that you can't slide a knife blade between them. How do you move an 80-ton block of stone 500 miles without trucks, trains, or cranes? The Nile River could have been used for part of the journey, but you still have to get these massive stones from the quarry to the river, then from the river to the construction site, then lifted hundreds of feet up into the pyramid. Even today, moving an 80-ton block would require massive cranes and specially designed trucks. The logistics alone would be a nightmare for modern engineers. But here's what's really impossible. The official story says the ancient Egyptians cut and shaped these granite blocks using copper tools. Copper is a soft metal. Granite is one of the hardest stones on Earth. Trying to cut hand-carved. Christopher Dunn, a master machinist with decades of experience in precision manufacturing, has studied these granite chambers extensively. His conclusion is shocking. The precision and surface finishes could only have been achieved with advanced machine tools. Tools that weren't supposed to exist thousands of years ago. Let's talk about the internal structure of the pyramid. It's not just a solid pile of stones. Inside, there's a complex system of passages, chambers, and shafts that required incredible planning and engineering skill. The passages are built to exact specifications, with some running perfectly straight for hundreds of feet. The famous Grand Gallery is a masterpiece of engineering, with a corbelled ceiling that gradually narrows as it rises, a technique that requires advanced understanding of structural engineering. There are even narrow shafts, sometimes called air shafts, that run from the inner chambers all the way to the outside of the pyramid. These shafts are only about 8 inches square, but they run perfectly straight for over 200 feet through solid stone. How do you drill a perfectly straight 8-inch hole through 200 feet of stone using ancient tools? The mathematical relationships built into the pyramid go far beyond pi. The pyramid's dimensions encode the Earth's circumference, the length of the year, the distance from Earth to the Sun, and many other astronomical and mathematical constants that weren't supposed to be known by ancient people. It's as if the pyramid is a giant encyclopedia of advanced mathematics and astronomy, written in stone. But perhaps the most impossible thing about the Great Pyramid is what's not inside it. Despite being supposedly built as a tomb for Pharaoh Khufu, no mummy has ever been found inside. No treasures, no hieroglyphic inscriptions, no evidence that it was ever used as a burial place. The chamber that's supposed to be Khufu's burial room is a plain granite box with no decorations, no inscriptions, nothing that you'd expect in a pharaoh's tomb. Other Egyptian tombs from the same period are covered with hieroglyphs, paintings, and treasures. The Great Pyramid has none of these. It's like building the world's most expensive house and then never moving in. All of these impossibilities point to the same conclusion. Questions will take us on a journey around the entire world, where we'll discover that the pyramid builders left their fingerprints on every continent. The evidence is about to get even more incredible. Empty tombs and hidden purposes. What if everything we've been told about why the pyramids were built is completely wrong? Picture walking into the most expensive, most carefully built house in your neighborhood, only to find it completely empty. No furniture, no decorations, no signs that anyone ever lived there. You'd probably wonder what it was really built for, wouldn't you? That's exactly what we find when we look inside the Great Pyramid. Despite being supposedly built as the tomb of Pharaoh Khufu, it's completely empty. And this emptiness is one of the biggest clues that the pyramids weren't tombs at all. Let me take you on a virtual tour inside the Great Pyramid to show you what I mean. When you enter the pyramid through the original entrance, you crawl through a narrow, downward-sloping passage. The walls are plain stone. No decorations, no hieroglyphs, no paintings. This is strange because every other Egyptian tomb from this time period is covered with colorful artwork and writing. The passage leads to an unfinished chamber deep underground. This room was supposedly meant to be Khufu's burial chamber, but it looks like construction was abandoned. It's rough, unfinished, and definitely not fit for a god king. From the entrance passage, another tunnel leads upward to what's called the Queen's Chamber. This room is also completely plain and empty. No treasures, no decorations, no signs that it was ever used for anything. Finally, you can climb up the amazing Grand Gallery, a beautiful corridor with a high, stepped ceiling that shows incredible engineering skill. This leads to the so-called King's Chamber, where Pharaoh Khufu was supposedly buried. But here's the shock. The King's Chamber contains only one thing: an empty granite box. No lid, no mummy, no treasures, no inscriptions. Just a plain stone box that looks more like industrial equipment than a royal sarcophagus. Compare this to other pharaohs' tombs from the same time period. They're filled with treasures, furniture, food, clothing, everything the pharaoh would need in the afterlife. Robbers had broken in, there would be evidence: broken walls, damaged passages, signs of forced entry. The pyramid shows no such evidence. It appears to have been built empty and remained empty. Third, other pyramids that were definitely robbed still contain evidence of their original purpose. Broken pieces of sarcophagi, scattered mummy wrappings, damaged wall paintings. The Great Pyramid contains none of these clues. The more you study it, the more obvious it becomes that the Great Pyramid was never intended to be a tomb. But if it wasn't a tomb, what was it? Some researchers have proposed a fascinating alternative theory. What if the pyramid was actually a machine? Not just a building, but a functioning device designed to serve a specific purpose. Christopher Dunn, the master machinist who studied the precision of the pyramid's construction, believes the Great Pyramid was actually a power plant, a machine for converting the Earth's natural vibrations into usable energy. Here's how this theory works. The pyramid sits on top of an underground water source. Water flowing through underground channels creates vibrations in the bedrock. The pyramid's massive stone structure would amplify these vibrations, like a giant tuning fork. The internal chambers aren't burial rooms. They're resonating chambers, designed to focus and concentrate these vibrations. The mysterious shafts that run from the chambers to the outside aren't air vents. They're waveguides for directing acoustic energy. The empty granite box in the King's Chamber wasn't a sarcophagus. It was a resonating chamber, designed to convert vibrations into electrical energy through a process called the piezoelectric effect. When certain crystals are squeezed or vibrated, they produce electricity. Sound impossible? Consider this. The Great Pyramid was built with incredible acoustic properties. If you clap your hands in the King's Chamber, the echo has a very specific frequency that matches the resonant frequency of the Earth itself. The pyramid's dimensions are mathematically related to the size and shape of the Earth. It's almost as if the pyramid and planets, the internal passages align with specific stars, and the pyramid's proportions encode important astronomical information. What's really interesting is that many ancient cultures around the world have legends about their monuments serving practical purposes. The Mayans said their pyramids were machines for communicating with the gods. The builders of Stonehenge claimed it was a healing temple that could cure diseases. Ancient Indian texts describe buildings called vimanas that could fly through the air. What if these weren't just myths? What if our ancestors had access to technologies that we've forgotten how to use? The empty pyramid becomes much more mysterious and exciting when you think of it as lost technology rather than just a tomb. It suggests that our ancestors were far more advanced than we've been taught. But the Great Pyramid isn't the only ancient structure that seems to have been built for purposes we don't understand. As we're about to discover, all around the world, there are monuments that show the same impossible precision, the same advanced knowledge, and the same mysterious emptiness. It's almost as if the same advanced civilization left fingerprints on every continent, building incredible monuments that we still can't explain today. Make sure you like this video and share it with someone who loves mysteries, because what we're going to explore next will take us on a journey around the entire world to discover the global fingerprints of this lost civilization. The evidence is everywhere once you know how to look for it. Imagine discovering that the same person had left their fingerprints in your house, your neighbor's house, and houses all around the world, even though that person was supposed to have never traveled beyond their own city. That's exactly what we find when we look at ancient monuments around the globe. The incredible precision and advanced knowledge we see in the pyramids isn't unique to Egypt. It shows up in ancient sites all over the world, built by civilizations that were supposedly never in contact with each other. This suggests that either the same people built all these monuments, or they all learned from the same advanced source. Let me take you on a journey around the world to see these amazing connections. Let's start in Central America, at a place called Teotihuacan in Mexico. This ancient city contains together perfectly. The alignments are exact, and the mathematical relationships built into the structures show advanced knowledge of geometry and astronomy. Now let's travel to Peru, to the ancient site of Sacsayhuaman, near the city of Cusco. Here, we find stone walls built with blocks so massive that they make the pyramid stones look small. Some of these blocks weigh over 200 tons, yet they fit together so perfectly that you can't slide a piece of paper between them. The shapes of these stones are incredibly complex, not rectangular blocks like modern building, but intricate, puzzle-like shapes with dozens of angles and curves. Each stone fits with its neighbors like pieces of a giant three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. How do you cut 200-ton stones into complex shapes and fit them together with perfect precision? Even today, with our most advanced equipment, this would be an enormous challenge. Yet the ancient Peruvians supposedly did it with bronze tools and rope. The site of Pumapunku in Bolivia shows even more impossible stonework. Here, massive blocks of andesite, one of the hardest stones on Earth, have been cut and shaped with precision that looks like machine work. The surfaces are perfectly flat. The angles are exactly 90 degrees. And some blocks have complex channels and holes drilled into them with perfect accuracy. These stones show evidence of advanced machining techniques. Some have been cut with what appears to be a saw that could cut through solid rock in perfectly straight lines. Others have holes drilled so precisely that they look like they were made with modern, diamond-tipped drill bits. Let's hop across the ocean to Lebanon, to the ancient site of Baalbek. Here, the Roman temple complex sits on top of a much older foundation made of stones called the Trilithon. These 3 stones are each estimated to weigh around 800 tons. 800 tons! That's like stacking 160 cars on top of each other. Except these aren't cars. They're single, solid blocks of limestone. How do you quarry, transport, and place stones of this size? Even our biggest modern cranes can only lift about 20,000 tons under. Cultures around the world share remarkably similar myths and symbols, despite being separated by oceans and thousands of years. Most cultures have flood legends that describe a worldwide catastrophe that destroyed an advanced civilization. The details are often strikingly similar. A great flood that covered the earth, survivors who rebuilt civilization, and gods who came from the sky to teach humans important skills. The Sumerians called them the Anunnaki. The Egyptians called them the Neteru. The Maya called them the Viracocha. The Hindus called them the Devas. Different names, but similar descriptions. Advanced beings who came from the stars and taught primitive humans about agriculture, astronomy, mathematics, and building techniques. Ancient art from around the world shows similar symbols and themes. Spirals, crosses, serpents, and flying discs appear in cultures that were supposedly never in contact. The feathered serpent god shows up in both ancient Egypt as the god Thoth and ancient America as Quetzalcoatl, despite these civilizations being separated by an ocean. Even more intriguing are the Olmec heads of Mexico. These massive stone sculptures, some weighing up to 40 tons, clearly show African facial features. Broad noses, full lips, and distinctive hairstyles that match ancient African cultures. Yet according to conventional history, Africans never reached the Americas until much later. How do you explain African-looking sculptures in ancient Mexico if there was no contact between these civilizations? Either our understanding of ancient travel capabilities is wrong, or these similarities point to a much older, global civilization that connected all these regions. The mathematical relationships found in ancient monuments also show remarkable consistency worldwide. The same proportions, the same geometric principles, and the same astronomical alignments show up in Egypt, Mexico, Peru, England, and other sites around the globe. It's as if the same instruction manual was used to build monuments on every continent. The same advanced knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and engineering appears everywhere, suggesting either direct contact between these civilizations or inheritance from a common civilization that had mastered engineering, astronomy, and mathematics to a degree that we're only beginning to appreciate today. What if this civilization built monuments around the world as part of a global network, perhaps for communication, navigation, or purposes we haven't discovered yet? And what if this advanced civilization came to a sudden end due to a global catastrophe, leaving only their most durable monuments as evidence of their existence? The pyramids and other ancient monuments might not just be isolated mysteries. They might be pieces of a much larger puzzle that, when put together, reveals the true story of human civilization. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because we're about to explore what might have happened to this lost civilization. The story of their rise and fall is one of the most incredible tales ever told, and the evidence suggests it's not mythology, it's history. The Lost Golden Age. What if I told you that thousands of years ago, Earth was home to a civilization so advanced that they make our modern world look primitive by comparison? What if this incredible civilization came to a sudden, catastrophic end, and most evidence of their existence was wiped away in a single, terrible event? This isn't science fiction. This is a story that's been preserved in the myths and legends of cultures around the world. And now modern science is finding evidence that these myths might actually be historical records of real events. Let me tell you the story of Atlantis. Not as a fairy tale, but as a possible chapter of forgotten human history. Most people know about Atlantis from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, who wrote about it around 360 BC. According to Plato, Atlantis was an island civilization of incredible advanced technology and wealth. The Atlanteans had flying machines, powerful weapons, and buildings that reached toward the sky. They had mastered the forces of nature and lived in harmony with advanced knowledge. But then, in a single day and night, Atlantis was destroyed by a terrible catastrophe. The entire civilization sank beneath the ocean, and almost all trace of it disappeared forever. For centuries, people assumed this was just a story Plato made up to teach lessons about politics and morality. But what if Plato was recording actual historical information that had been passed down through generations? Geological, astronomical, and historical are all pointing to the same ancient time period when something incredibly important happened to human civilization. But what could have caused such a complete destruction, that an entire advanced civilization disappeared almost without a trace? Modern science has found evidence of exactly such an event. Around 12,900 years ago, something dramatic happened to Earth's climate. The planet had been warming up after the last ice age, but suddenly, the warming stopped, and Earth plunged back into a mini ice age that lasted over 1,000 years. This period is called the Younger Dryas. Scientists have found evidence that this sudden climate change was caused by a cosmic impact, either a comet or asteroid that struck Earth with devastating force. The impact would have triggered massive wildfires, huge tsunamis, and dramatic climate changes that transformed the entire planet. Imagine the most powerful nuclear bomb ever built. Then multiply that by 1,000. That's the kind of destructive force we're talking about. The impact would have vaporized anything at ground zero and triggered a chain of disasters that affected the entire world. Massive ice sheets that had been stable for thousands of years would have melted rapidly, causing sea levels to rise by hundreds of feet. Coastal civilizations, exactly where you'd expect advanced maritime civilizations like Atlantis to develop, would have been completely submerged. The impact would have thrown enormous amounts of dust and debris into the atmosphere, blocking out the sun and causing a nuclear winter effect that lasted for years. Agriculture would have been impossible. Most plants and animals would have died. Any civilization that survived the initial impact would have faced starvation and freezing temperatures. This explains why advanced civilizations like the one that built the Sphinx and pyramids would have come to such a sudden end. It wasn't gradual decline. It was sudden, catastrophic destruction that left only the most durable stone monuments as evidence of what had been. But here's what's really fascinating. If some people did survive this global catastrophe, what would they do? They would try to preserve the most important knowledge of their civilization. They would build monuments designed to last forever. These stories would be told and retold for generations, eventually becoming the myths and legends we know today. This explains why cultures around the world have such similar flood stories and tales of advanced beings who taught primitive humans important skills. These weren't myths. They were historical memories of real events and real people. The gods, who taught humans about agriculture, astronomy, and building techniques, might have been survivors of the pre-catastrophe civilization, sharing their knowledge with the hunter-gatherer societies that were all that remained of humanity after the disaster. Think about how this changes our understanding of human history. Instead of a slow, gradual progression from primitive cave dwellers to modern civilization, human development might be cyclical. Advanced civilizations rise, reach incredible heights, then get destroyed by natural catastrophes, forcing the survivors to start over from scratch. We might not be the first advanced civilization on Earth. We might be the latest in a series of rises and falls that stretches back much further than we ever imagined. This cyclical view of history explains many mysteries about ancient civilizations. It explains how ancient people could have knowledge that seems too advanced for their supposed level of development. It explains the incredible precision and mathematical sophistication of ancient monuments. And it explains why so many cultures share similar stories about lost golden ages and catastrophic floods. But perhaps most importantly, this story serves as a warning for our own civilization. If advanced civilizations have risen and fallen before, what does that mean for us? The evidence suggests that these catastrophic events are not one-time occurrences. Cosmic impacts happen regularly in Earth's history. Climate changes can occur rapidly and dramatically. The forces that destroyed previous civilizations are still out there, and they could affect us just as they affected our predecessors. The ancient monuments aren't just telling us about the past. They might be warning us about the future. They're reminding us that even the most advanced civilizations are fragile when faced with the awesome power of natural disasters. But they're also telling us something hopeful. Even when civilizations are destroyed, knowledge can survive. Human ingenuity and determination, incredible journey through time. Looking back at the evidence we've uncovered, one thing becomes crystal clear. The ancient monuments scattered across our planet aren't just impressive piles of stone. They're messages, carefully crafted communications from our ancestors, preserved across thousands of years, waiting for the day when we would become wise enough to understand them. What are these messages telling us? And why is it so important that we listen to them right now? The first message is about human potential. Every impossibly precise stone, every perfectly aligned passage, every mathematical relationship encoded in ancient monuments is telling us the same thing. Human beings are capable of far more than we realize. Our ancestors achieved things that we still struggle to accomplish today, even with our modern technology. They understood mathematical principles that we thought were discovered only recently. They built structures so precisely that they serve as standards for accuracy even today. This isn't ancient history. This is a mirror showing us what we're capable of when we combine knowledge, determination, and cooperation on a massive scale. The pyramids are proof that when humans work together toward a common goal, we can literally move mountains. But there's a deeper message here, one that's particularly relevant to our world today. The ancient monuments seem to be warning us that human civilization is more fragile than we think. The evidence points to advanced civilizations that reached incredible heights of achievement, only to be brought low by natural disasters beyond their control. Climate change, cosmic impacts, geological upheavals. These forces have shaped human history in ways we're only beginning to understand. Our ancestors built their monuments, not just to showcase their achievements, but to preserve essential knowledge for the civilizations that would come after them. They knew that catastrophes could happen, and they wanted to make sure that the most important discoveries wouldn't be lost forever. This is particularly relevant today as we face our own global challenges. Climate change, natural disasters, and the possibility of cosmic impacts are still real threats to human civilization. The ancient monuments remind us that we need to think beyond our own lifetimes and consider what knowledge and achievements we want to preserve for future. Our time indoors looking at screens, this message is more important than ever. The ancient monuments call us to reconnect with the natural world, to look up at the night sky, and to remember our place in the grand scheme of the universe. Perhaps most importantly, The monuments carry a message about the power of questions. Everything we've discovered in this investigation started with someone asking, what if? What if the conventional explanation is wrong? What if there's more to the story? What if we looked at this evidence with fresh eyes? Dr. Robert Schoch asked, what if we looked at the Sphinx as a geologist instead of a historian? Robert Bauval asked, what if the pyramid layout is connected to the stars? Christopher Dunn asked, what if the pyramid was a machine instead of a tomb? These simple questions led to revolutionary discoveries that changed how we understand human history. They remind us that the most important breakthroughs often come from questioning what everyone assumes to be true. This is a message our modern world desperately needs to hear. In an age when we're told that all the important discoveries have already been made, the ancient monuments remind us that there are still incredible mysteries waiting to be solved. There are still questions to be asked, still assumptions to be challenged, still discoveries that could transform our understanding of ourselves and our world. The resistance these discoveries have faced from mainstream academia carries its own message. It reminds us that new ideas often face opposition, not because they're wrong, but because they challenge established beliefs and threaten existing power structures. Throughout history, the biggest breakthroughs have come from individuals who are willing to stand up against conventional wisdom and present evidence that made people uncomfortable. The ancient monuments remind us to keep an open mind and to judge ideas based on evidence, not on whether they conform to what we've been taught to believe. But perhaps the most profound message from our ancient ancestors is about time itself. The pyramids and other monuments were built to last forever. They were designed to survive ice ages, floods, earthquakes, and the rise and fall of civilizations. The world shared knowledge, techniques, and possibly even direct contact. They remind us that human beings have always been connected, that we're all part of the same human family, regardless of our differences. In our modern world, where division and conflict often dominate the headlines, the ancient monuments remind us of what we can accomplish when we work together. They show us that our greatest achievements have always come from cooperation, not competition. As we face global challenges like climate change, resource depletion, and the need to expand into space, the ancient monuments remind us that these challenges require global solutions. Just as our ancestors worked together to build monuments that would last forever, we need to work together to build a future that will benefit all of humanity. The final message from our ancient ancestors might be the most important of all. It's a message about wonder. Despite all their advanced knowledge and sophisticated technology, our ancestors never lost their sense of awe at the magnificence of the universe. They built their monuments not just for practical purposes, but as expressions of their wonder at the cosmic forces that shape our world. They wanted future generations to look at these incredible structures and feel the same sense of amazement that drove them to build something beautiful and eternal. In our age of scientific materialism, where everything is reduced to numbers and equations, the ancient monuments remind us that wonder and awe are not just emotions. They're essential human responses to the mystery and beauty of existence. The pyramids have been standing in the desert for thousands of years, patiently waiting for us to become wise enough to understand their messages. Now that we're beginning to decode what they're telling us, we have a responsibility to listen carefully and to act on what we've learned. These monuments aren't just ancient history, they're guides for our future. They're reminding us of our potential, warning us of our fragility, and inspiring us to think beyond our own brief lives to consider what kind of legacy we want to leave for the generations who will come after us. The greatest mystery on earth has revealed its secrets, and those secrets are calling us to become worthy heirs to the incredible achievements of our ancestors, while building something even greater for our descendants. The ancient voice is enough to ask the right questions. Keep wondering, keep questioning, and keep looking up at the stars.